Subsequent to enduring constant assaults from hired soldier powers in the heightening oil wars, the representatives of Yutime Chinese Petroleum Treatment Facility in the Center East will be removed from the structure by a confidential security group from China. The group is driven by commandant mythical beast Luo, who is presently gazing at half of a pic of the family that he hasn't found in a very long time. At the point when they come to the plant, they find it intensely harmed on the grounds that it's generally enduring an onslaught from the agitators. They meet the top of the organization, Teacher Cheng, who quickly starts sharing her departure plans. They must choose the option to go through the Parkway of Death to have the option to arrive at the Green Zone. In the interim, previous U.S. Marine Chris meets with his sibling Henry, who drives a gathering of hired soldiers that Chris likes to ridicule. Henry carries a lot of cash with a mission. They should seize a global criminal who is being removed to the Green Zone. Anyway, Chris turns the proposal down. Thereafter, Chris gets back to his town, where he deals with a lot of vagrant children. The town's water siphon is presently broken, so Owen comes to investigate. The harm is extreme and it will cost huge amount of cash to fix it, so Chris starts re-evaluating Henry's deal. Back in the plant, Luo and his group get ready of an arrangement to safeguard the regular citizens while Worker Mai watches from the window, not considering confronting Luo yet. The following morning, they shut up every one of the PCs and Cheng places the vital in her sack, which she passes to Mai. Then the group directs the workers to board a lot of transports, ignorant that the swindler is putting an imprint on the transport that will convey Cheng. Mai will be on Luo's transport, which she is distraught about. The helicopters that brought the group will push ahead to the Green Zone, so the group is on their own at this point. As the transports take off, Mai incidentally drops her journal and uncovers she has the other portion of the image, since it turns out she's Luo's girl. Anyway, the entirety of Luo's endeavors to make amicable discussion are disregarded. In the end, they arrive at the Parkway of Death, which is a part of the street loaded up with traps and obliterated vehicles that succumbed to them. It's an extremely perilous region and nearly no one endures crossing it. There are kids asking for help all over the place, but on the other hand they're important for the snare and the transports simply continue onward. At the point when they find two vehicles impeding the street, Luo simply pushes them with the front of the transport to open the way. Things start exploding around the obliterated vehicles, yet the group simply continues to propel, knowing it's every one of the a stunt to draw in the honest. Seeing Mai's concern, Luo vows to safeguard her. However, Mai promptly gets down on him. She realizes he'll safeguard whoever his central goal directs and he couldn't care less about his family. If not, he could not have possibly deserted his little girl and his withering spouse. The transports go across the Thruway of Death without issues, just to then find a dust storm covering the street ahead, which doesn't seem okay since they checked the climate before and being clear was assumed. Having no other decision, they start passing through the sand, and Luo sees it doesn't act like a typical tempest. To exacerbate the situation, the colleagues lose contact with one another and all signs on their frameworks are stuck. At that point, Mai sees something close by, however it rapidly vanishes and she pins it on her creative mind. Anyway, Mai is correct. Chris and the soldiers of fortune are following the transports through the tempest, understanding what transport to pick thanks to the imprint the person left before. When they're ready, they shoot a snare on the last transport to bring the vehicle closer. Then, at that point, they utilize a stage to jump on it prior to exploding the vehicle. Since the vehicle is as yet connected to the transport by a wire, this makes it bob and break the transport's front window. This allows two hired soldiers the opportunity to get through it, and they promptly take out the gatekeepers prior to assuming command over the transport. In the meantime, two different soldiers of fortune hop onto the accompanying transport and get inside too. However, here the watchman gives them a fair battle. In the wake of incapacitating one another, the watchman and the hired soldier start battling hand to hand. Yet it just endures a couple of shots before the gatekeeper is punched through the window and out of the transport. Fortunately, she rests with perfect timing to try not to be run over. The soldiers of fortune assume control over this transport as well and get off the street to end their central goal. When they're clear, Henry and his hired soldiers take a couple of the transport travelers prisoner, and Chris is frantic on the grounds that they appear to be regular folks, not hoodlums. Henry lets him know it's simply each of the a stunt. Minutes after the fact, the fundamental transports at long last leave the tempest and acknowledge their missing two vehicles. They attempt to contact the watchman without any result, and Luo makes certain there's nothing normal about this tempest. The helicopters return to help and take Luo and Mai on a ride to look through the area, which permits them to find the foe had been utilizing a fly motor to push the sand. The helicopter follows the street the truck with the motor took and finds one of the transports with a watchman, who lets them know Americans were behind this. The other helicopter is going through an alternate street and tracks down the soldier of fortune vehicles. The two sides promptly open fire, and the watchman figures out how to hit a hired fighter vehicle to make it detonate. Chris is a brilliant driver and guides different vehicles to evade every one of the accompanying shots until they find where they can pause and hide to proficiently shoot back more. The helicopter attempts to make a divert to get them from behind. However, the hired fighters shoot first and hit the helicopter, making it crash. In the interim, the remainder of the group takes the transports to the green zone while Luo's helicopter finds the last transport and finds most travelers are there, yet they kidnapped Cheng and her colleagues. Back to the hired soldiers, they show up at the base and Chris pushes Henry, requesting to understand what he's been hauled into. At that point it's uncovered that the soldiers of fortune had been recruited by Owen. What head of the gathering has been going after the processing plant? He makes sense of he became weary of working for royal organizations and presently he's intending to take everything for himself to make truckloads of money. He likewise extends to Chris an employment opportunity as his security official since Henry is as well youthful and frantic. Chris turns him down and leaves, disregarding his siblings' requests to remain. A short time later Henry attempts to let Owen know that they needn't bother with him and he can finish the work, yet Owen replies by shooting him, and his men shoot the hired soldiers that aren't important for Owen's own group. Minutes after the fact, Luo is back in the helicopter and sees Chris drive by. He thinks about shooting, however chooses it's smarter to follow him all things considered. The helicopter is falling short on fuel, so they'll drop Luo and leave. In the interim Chris gets back to his home and punches a photo placement, overpowered by responsibility. One of the children requests that he come join the fun, and that is the second Luo tracks down him. He takes the ball and starts tossing it at Chris, requesting replies. However Chris won't utter a word. At the point when a youngster hinders to request the ball, Luo would rather not alarm him and professes to leave. However he's actually following Chris. A short time later, Chris passes on in his truck to meet with Henry at their typical spot. Anyway, when he enters the neglected structure, he's crushed to find his sibling's dead body, which Owen left to insult him. Luo gradually advances inside as well, just to be bounced on from behind by Chris, and a battle follows. The two men are great warriors and continue to pose inquiries as they toss each other a lot of kicks and punches, yet the two of them won't reply. Chris takes out a blade, yet Luo knows the moves to stop it, and soon the two people are utilizing anything object they can track down in the space to assault. Then Chris attempts to push a vehicle on Luo, who moves far removed in the nick of time and hauls Henry's body away with him so it doesn't get crushed. Luo is going to toss an explosive, however Chris stops him and their contending at last causes them to acknowledge they share a foe, practically speaking. At that point a lot of French authorities show up requesting cash. It appears Owen has deceived them too. While attempting to berate them, Chris incidentally pulls the trigger from the projectile, and the French men leave before it detonates. Then Kais and Luo set the pin back to forestall the blast prior to actually looking at outside to affirm the French men are simply getting back to their trucks to get their weapons and open shoot. The pair surges back inside and starts contending again over tracking down the right projectiles. Since they can't find what they need, Chris winds up opening an opening in the wall and Luo passes him explosives that get tossed through the opening. After a couple of explosives, the shooting unexpectedly stops. So Luo takes the risk to take out his firearm and request replies from Chris once more. However Christ simply emerges to keep an eye on his truck, just to think that it is obliterated. A short time later Chris at last informs Luo concerning Owen while they set up a lot of explosives to explode the structure before they leave. In the interim Owen takes Cheng and different prisoners to the processing plant since he believes Cheng should give him admittance to the hold so he can take the oil. At first Cheng rejects, so Owen starts killing prisoners to make her discussion. The last one ends up being her child, so she at long last breaks to save him. Cheng makes sense of that the PC key and the codes were left in her pack, which she doesn't have. Owen is lashing out, so Cheng's child advises them to follow her telephone, which is clinched also. Back in the town, Luo and Chris return to keep an eye on the children. Mai hears Cheng's telephone ring clinched and gets the call, yet the guest promptly hangs up. Luo calls his group and affirms every one of the workers securely came to the green zone. A short time later he finds Chris engaging the children with a melody and chooses to go along with them by behaving like the creatures from the verses. Then the team goes outside to get a nibble and Chris uncovers he found Mai's notepad lying around. He got it to add his number to it since he needs to hit on her, yet the entirety of his indecent remarks quickly kick the bucket when Luo lets him know she's his little girl, despite the fact that their relationship is demolished. Chris shares how he lost his dad in a fight for his nation. Yet Luo clears up for him that safeguarding the nation likewise implies safeguarding the family living in it, and that is how Chris' father had been doing his children. This is heard by Mai, who starts to comprehend her father better at this point. Out of nowhere they hear dubious advances entering the town. Mai removes the children while Luo and Chris sneak around to find Owen's men are coming for them. Chris enters the structure and takes out a person by crushing him against a wall while Luo bounces on the rooftop and takes out an expert marksman. Another shooter promptly corners him. However at that point Chris goes along with him and bounces on the person, making the rooftop disintegrate down and the couple to fall. They rapidly pass on the structure and stow away to hang tight for the following person. Luo makes a motion when he draws nearer and Chris rapidly hops on him to take him out before he can shoot. Anyway Chris doesn't comprehend the other sign Luo makes and they nearly get found out. Fortunately Luo races to Chris and makes him shoot the accompanying person. Subsequently, Chris takes the rooftops again while Luo goes through the back and starts battling any man he sees, experiencing no difficulty taking them out individually. Chris shoots a couple of folks as well, yet this uncovers his area and the foe shoots a rocket at his gallery, making him fall. Fortunately Chris carries far removed just before the pinnacle falls on him. Then, at that point, Chris goes searching for Mai and takes Cheng's telephone prior to carrying it to Owen's men. Individuals of the town emerge to assist with shielding their home, but the foe answers by uncovering an explosive. They make sense of they need the pack, so to keep away from gore, Chris gives it to them while disregarding Mai's requests. This really aims Owen's men to leave. In the first part of the day, Mai makes sense of why the adversary needed the pack. At first Chris couldn't care less about some bonehead taking a touch of oil, yet Mai brings up this would really be the greatest oil heist in history and what it would mean for the entire country. Presently Chris needs to help, so he offers his truck with the motor to arrive. Luo tells Mai not to come since it's excessively risky, and she cautions them not to involve firearms in that frame of mind to stay away from a blast. After they leave, Mai sees there's another vehicle accessible for her. In the treatment facility, the sack shows up and Owen gives it to Cheng, who promptly enacts the PCs to save her child. The oil begins coursing through the lines and arrives at a few gigantic boats that are sitting tight at the coast for the arrangement. At the point when the team at long last shows up, the watchmen open fire and even shoot a rocket, yet Chris is great at evading everything. He drives the truck through every one of the hindrances out and about and enters the treatment facility, yet when an oil truck impedes the way, he makes an unexpected turn and runs into a stage that falls and fills the region with a dust storm. Presently everybody knows they're here, yet the residue allows them the opportunity to leave the truck and sneak around. Owen takes the key from the PC so the oil can't be halted and leaves with his own gatekeepers while sending the rest after the interlopers. Back to the pair, Luo climbs a pinnacle yet before Chris can follow him, the two of them get encircled by watches and another battle starts. Fortunately the team is truly adept at shielding themselves against different foes. Luo remains on a line so less men can come after him simultaneously, and Chris snatches a colossal line to hit numerous men on the double. At the point when Luo nearly falls evading an assault, Chris utilizes a similar line to push him back up and hit a couple of men prior to moving Luo on to another stage. Owen utilizes this second to express farewell to them, and more men show up to proceed with the battle. Chris and Luo split to continue to take out folks without the utilization of firearms, and after a couple of additional punches, they at last advance inside the fundamental structure. There's a gatekeeper hanging tight for them. So Luo tosses a blade to divert him and Chris hits him with a hose. Luo utilizes this opportunity to make Cheng and his child run. Then the couple starts battling the watchman, trading a couple of hits prior to taking cover behind the PCs. As it happened before, they attempt to share weapons and make the erroneous trade. So Luo needs to turn over and nearly has chance all the while. Chris and the watchman open shoot simultaneously, yet after a couple of shots, Chris runs out of projectiles. Fortunately Chris can make an arrangement and starts bothering him as an interruption, permitting Luo to sneak around and hop on the person off guard, him through the closest window. While Luo deals with the gatekeeper, Chris pursues Owen, yet he can't run quickly enough to match the speed of a vehicle. At that point Mai shows up in Chris' other truck, so they pursue Owen together. There are weapons under the seat and Chris makes sense of the American way is to have firearms all over the place. Back in the processing plant, Luo and the watchman are battling hand to hand, and Cheng watches from a far distance. At the point when Luo goes to advise her to leave, the watchman attempts to escape by climbing the hardware, so Luo utilizes a discharge-impeding froth firearm to stop him by making him slip and block his vision. Sadly the firearm breaks and Luo falls too. Presently the froth is coming down out of control, and Luo snatches a few wires to join to his belt that will permit him not to suffocate. The gatekeeper hops on him once more, yet Luo rapidly drives him away and soon the two men are climbing the design while as yet battling one another. At the point when they fall into the froth, they keep on battling there, and because of the wires Luo gets the benefit and pushes the person against the hardware, at last taking him out. Subsequently Luo utilizes a fan to dispose of all the froth prior to leaving. Out and about, Owen's gatekeeper starts shooting and Chris quickly shoots back until the adversary is out of slugs. Then, at that point, Owen's vehicle goes off the street, believing Chris' old truck will not have the option to endure the desert. There are a couple of slopes in front of them, and Mai figures out how to go through the first without any issues, yet the second ends up being harder and the vehicle crashes. Mai and Chris don't have the foggiest idea what to do, yet fortunately Luo appears in the motor truck and the threesome pursues Owen once more. Before long they understand the truck is excessively sluggish, yet Chris uncovers the motor isn't simply helpful to make dust storms. He presses a button and the motor goes full scale, making the truck go at an extraordinary speed that permits it to arrive at the oil trucks and run into one of them. The oil truck takes off and arrives against different trucks, setting off a chain of blasts that cause Owen to lose all the oil and send his vehicle flying as well. The driver passes on from consumes, yet Owen gets by with just a portion of his face harmed. Frantic to make do, Owen offers Chris cash once more. However, Chris turns him down, so Owen pushes the body out and drives away. Luo attempts to pursue him, however the truck's tank is spilling and making mud, causing the truck to stall out. Chris advises Mai to press an alternate button, and this enacts two side slides that permit the truck to slide through the sand utilizing the force of the motor. Luo and Mai drive while Chris clutches the side of the truck, and when they at long last find Owen in his vehicle, they push it toward a bluff, just for Owen to move the vehicle far removed. Luo cautions Chris that they're going to fall as well, yet Chris doesn't hear him. Then Luo ties himself and Mai up so they leap out of the truck just before it falls, cutting Chris down as well. At the point when the pair looks into, they find the rope is appended to Owen's vehicle, and when Owen sees this he chooses to carry them down with him. The vehicle goes off the precipice and Owen smiles thinking he won, yet fortunately Luo removes the rope without a moment to spare, so he and Mai securely land on a stone stage. After Owen collides with his passing, Mai and Luo call out to Chris without any result. At that point Mai finds Luo has her notepad and opens it to see he put the image sorts back out. Father and little girl accommodate with an embrace, however the sweet second is intruded on by Chris, who has been moving up from the beginning. They help him up and another contention starts with Luo when Chris attempts to hit on Mai. They understand they're stuck there, so the main way they need to get out is to begin shouting for help. In the interim Luo's group encompasses the boats taking the oil and captures all interested parties. Minutes after the fact the threesome is protected and they return to the town, where they fix the siphon together and bring water back. The festival is interfered with by the group declaring they have another mission, and Luo welcomes Chris to go along with them.